Hello and welcome back to Passing the Torch, an online Bible study with your host and teacher, Bob Clark, and that's me. Today we're continuing with part 2 of a series that we started about godly and practical wisdom for those who are considering marriage, for those who are newlyweds, or for those who are newly empty nesters. But if you've been married and you still got kids at home, you can come along for the ride as well. Who knows? No telling what we can learn. So, what are we talking about and why? Well, the what is important things to consider before getting married is one of the bigger focuses of this. Why are we, for those that are considering marriage? Because there's a lot of issues to consider before getting married, if you want the marriage to work, that is. Why newlyweds? Because if you're recently married, you're probably finding issues that you didn't know that you would be facing. And why empty nesters? Because you've had to consider children for so long that you've forgotten how to court each other. That's an important thing. Now, this is a message up front here. I am not a marriage expert. I'm not a marriage counselor, certified or otherwise. I'm not. This is not an end-all teaching. But it will point out some important things that you need to work through if you're going to get married or if you're already married. This lesson does not replace the need for premarital counseling. I strongly suggest going to a godly pastor for premarital counseling. And if your pastor doesn't do that, find a pastor who does. I also strongly suggest reading or listening to people like Jimmy Evans, and there's others out there they have ministries to help improve marriages. All right, so here's my parental warning. This lesson is for mature adults considering marriage or that are already married. I'm not going to deliberately be vulgar, but some areas of a marriage are not appropriate for discussing with children present. So last time we talked about what is marriage, specifically from a godly standpoint. What is God's view of marriage? This time we're going to talk about red flags, whether it's for premarital or sometimes during marriage. But red flags that should let you know something's wrong here. Then next time we'll talk about important things to discuss before getting married typically. And then we'll have a lesson on godly advice for young lovers of all ages. So let's talk about this red flags thing. Well, top reasons for divorce. I went and looked online about this and different websites and different studies. They categorize these things differently because, well, which are cause and which are effect for one thing. But here's my version of it. So top reasons for divorce. Extramarital affairs. Cheating. And this is not always physical. Sometimes this is an emotional affair. That happens too. But is that a cause or effect? Sometimes that's the effect of some of the other things. That's the effect of a spouse ignoring, one spouse ignoring the other. Now, that's not the only reason, okay? But that will cause a divorce, or can cause. Lack of intimacy. Okay, intimacy. What is intimacy? For him, that looks like sex. It's physical. For her, typically, that looks like time. Looks like communication. It looks like non-sexual touching. It looks like, let me go back. Communication, it looks like talking and listening. All right? It's an emotional thing for her. That's intimacy. Okay, reasons for divorce: money, not enough of it, or differences in how to spend or save money causes a lot of problems. Religious belief differences, differences on raising children, lack of commitment or reliability. So we're going to wind up getting into all of these things in the next lesson, because most of these things are things that you need to talk about beforehand. All right? Reasons for divorce: incessant or frequent nagging or criticism. Typically, the wife nagging, the husband criticizing. Gentlemen, you need to settle one thing before you get married. It is acceptable for her to gain weight, especially when she's pregnant. Now, overdoing things, whatever. You can discuss that. But pregnancy adds weight. And I know of one person that I've known, one husband that I have known, who cheated on his wife because he didn't want her to get add any weight whatsoever when she got pregnant. Tough. That's life. Sorry about that one, but unrealistic expectations. Okay, what I just said would be an unrealistic expectation by that husband. Addictions can cause divorce. Abuse can cause divorce. Note that irreconcilable differences is not a reason. It's a sign of some of the other issues. Okay? What reasons did Jesus give, or did he say that were acceptable for divorce? Matthew 19, starting at verse 7. They said to him, "Why then did Moses command," notice their wording, "why did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away?" He, Jesus, said to them, "Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted." Moses didn't command to divorce her. He permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery. And whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. All right, so let me point out something that I've realized, or not realized, I've had taught recently, okay? So in the King James, in this verse, let me go back and read it the way the King James says is, whoever divorces his wife except for fornication and marries another, etc. It puts the word fornication, but anytime I've read it, I have mentally put in the word adultery there. In other words, whoever divorces his wife because she cheats on you inside the marriage. That's what adultery is when a married person cheats or has sex outside of marriage. But fornication is different than that. Fornication is any sex outside of marriage, period. Whether it's before marriage or whatever. It can include that. However, the word here, the Greek word is porneia. That's not exactly the meaning that it has. It includes fornication, but it has a broader meaning to it. And it really means anything that violates the norms of the covenant marriage relationship. So it can include adultery. It can include unacknowledged sex with someone else before marriage. In other words, if you get married and then find out that your spouse had premarital sex with somebody else, that would fall under that category. Abuse will fall under that category. Whether it's a physical, verbal, emotional abuse, that is something that violates the norms of covenant marriage relationship. Abuse is cause for a divorce. That has been mistaught in the church, in many churches over decades, if not centuries. But that's the way it really should be taught. And most people are teaching it that way now. It can also include failure to provide for the family. I'm not talking about just losing a job. That's not what I'm talking about. But refusing to work. That would fall into that category. Again, here, let me be specific. The husband refusing to work. All right? Whether the wife works or not, that is for you two to work through that. All right? But the husband's job is to work. If y'all decide that, well, she can make more money than the husband, it'd be better off for him to stay home with the kids. All right. You've worked through that issue. That now falls under the norms of a covenant marriage relationship. Understand what I mean by that? So this isn't the letter of the law thing. This is the It's the heart thing. Okay? So, red flags. We're going to talk specifics here. Premarital cheating. And if you can see the charts that I have up here, you're going to see several here. And it has from the game Monopoly, do not pass go. Stop here, in other words. If the person you are considering marrying has already cheated with someone else, stop now. What I mean by cheating, since you have been fiancés, or dating, or however you want to describe it, has the other person had sex with someone else? Things that make this worse. Has it happened multiple times? Did they come clean on a single time, or did you find out through someone else? Okay. He or she will do the same in marriage. If this person has cheated on you, can you really trust them in marriage? If you think so, then why? What have they done to prove their reliability, their trustworthiness? That person most likely will not be committed to you in this marriage. Taken to the extreme. My wife has an aunt who found out after 20-something years of marriage that her husband had another wife and another family on an island in the Caribbean that he would go to every once in a while on work, or for work. You don't want that to happen. All right, so if you ever hear the line, if you truly loved me, then you will, or you would, there is no good that can come out of that phrase. Okay, let me be more specific here, okay? If you truly love me, then you will sleep with me. If you truly love me, then you will perform such and such sex act. If you truly love me, then you will loan me money, especially before marriage. If you truly love me, then you will move in with me. This person is using you for his or her gratification to get what he or she wants and does not love you, no matter what he or she says. Run. There's a caveat. Ladies, there is a tendency to say this. If you truly love me, then you will tell me you love me. I agree with you. But don't force guys into saying that. What you're doing is potentially forcing them into a commitment that they aren't ready to make, and you're going to suffer in the long run. Allow them to tell you when they are ready. And if they don't tell you in a reasonable time, months, if y'all have been dating for 2 years and they still haven't said, I love you, something's wrong. They're not ready for a commitment. Still, probably need to run for that. But don't pressure them into saying, if you love me, then you'll tell me you love me. But guys, tell them. Premarital abuse. If the person you are considering marrying has already abused you somehow, whether physically or verbally or whatever, stop now. They will do the same in marriage. What is meant by abuse? All physical abuse, slapping, punching, kicking, hair pulling, etc., is automatically a reason to abandon getting married or getting out of a marriage if you're already married. But abuse can also be verbal, emotional, mental. This should also put up huge warning signs to get out of the marriage before it starts. So this is not only men abusing women, but it can also be women abusing men. I've heard of that as well. If she is slapping and scratching and such as that, that's abuse as well. That should not be in marriage. At times, It could just be the threat of violence. If there's right now in the news, there's an issue where a woman is missing and her husband had threatened, or she had reported him, years ago for threatening to kill her. Well, at this point he likely has. We don't know for sure yet, but if they do it to you, that is the spouse, they will do it to any children. So that's the reason for stopping now. Now I'm going to give you a caveat here. I'm going to give it a very personal example. When my wife and I were dating, I had a first cousin, who died in a car wreck. I was in extreme emotional distress. How about that? Going through the grieving process. She and I drove to, my parents had a house on a lake. So we drove there basically just to get away, just so I could grieve. Both of my parents are the babies in very large families. By that time, I had been to numerous funerals, for family members and others. My wife had never been to a funeral before. She didn't know what death looked like. She didn't know what grieving people look like or what they need. So at this time, she didn't know what I needed for comfort. All I wanted was to be held, and she didn't understand that. In her mind, somebody who's grieving just wants to be left alone. And my reaction could easily be construed as violent. I mean, it really was. But I didn't hurt her. Okay? I'm very thankful that I didn't, because if I did, she should have stopped everything right then. All right, but abuse, call off the wedding, call off the relationship. Substance abuse. If the person you are considering marrying abuses alcohol, drugs, or other substances, stop now. Let me define something here. Abuses alcohol. That's not just someone who drinks or occasionally gets drunk in controlled circumstances. But that's the person who drinks and drives, argues about not being an alcoholic when they obviously are, etc. They will do the same in marriage. You may think you can help this person you love when you're married, but you are much more likely to make excuses for that person and become a codependent enabler. Get them help if they accept it. Before getting married, get the person help. Don't get married while they're still abusing substances of any type. All right. But this is what you may be saying. But I love him, or but he's only done it once, or only a few times. The guy, but she's so fine and I'm not worthy of her. I'll never be able to find another girl as good as her. But she is the only girl who ever paid any attention to me at all. If I say no, I will die a lonely bachelor. All of these sound right, but all of these are lies that you've told yourself, and you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life. Stop and think through some of this. If you are married and dealing with abuse, leave now. If you have children, take them and leave now. Find godly help. God never intended a person to put up with abuse from their spouse. The lessons that I'm teaching here are not about saving a marriage that's been violated, but helping to make a marriage better. All right, if you're dealing with this, like I say, leave now. Find godly help that can deal with what you're dealing with. Don't depend on what I'm teaching right here, because that goes beyond what I'm teaching. If you're married and dealing with cheating, get professional help, godly professional help now. God does not require a person to put up with a spouse cheating, although he can be overcome with help. This lesson, again, is not about saving a marriage that's been violating, but helping to make marriage better. Find appropriate help. So here's wisdom for you. It sounds like I've really said, there's really nobody out there good enough for you. Okay, let's get real here. You will not find a perfect person in anybody other than Jesus. They're not going to be perfect. Face that. And neither are you. And no one is saying that marriage is easy. It's a lot of work and forgiveness and grace. Did I mention the work part? But a person should not have to put up with cheating, physical or emotional, or abuse, whether physical, mental, substance, from the person they are vowing to love, honor, and cherish. If you are the one who's doing the cheating or abusing, stop and get help. If you or your partner have gotten involved in any of these things, please stop and get help. Don't get married until you've gotten the help. If you are married, stop and get help. Now let's get real. This takes swallowing your pride. It does. But it's so much better than the alternative results. And with that, we're going to stop for the day. And next time, or for this lesson, next time we're going to talk about important things to discuss. So we're going to talk about discussing a lot of the things that lead to the red flags that I just talked about. All right, so we're going to get into talking about religion and sex and kids and money and life. And then the last lesson, we'll talk about godly advice for young lovers of all ages. And with that, we'll see you next time on Passing the Torch. So long.